Welcome to the only podcast on the planet dedicated to exploring the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesalers and their leaders. This is the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. I'm your host, the founder of Wholesaler Masterminds, Rob Shore. Wholesalers, welcome back to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. Wholesalers, if you had a chance to jump out and give us a review on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, we are deeply appreciative if you take a moment and do that for us. Also, I wanted you to know that Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers, I'm going to plant this little Easter egg. Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers, if you reach out to Melanie and tell Melanie that you heard about a 50% discount at Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers, that 50% discount will be yours off of month one of a 40-hour package. Give her a call. Find out more at WMMschedulers.com, or just head out to the website, wholesalermasterminds.com. Wholesalers, I'm so delighted to have our guest back for a third visit with us. We have some parallel lives, and I didn't even tell Anthony I was going to go over some of this stuff, but I'm going to say it. We have some parallel lives here. It's really kind of freaky. So as I read the introduction to his brand new book, he's got a brand new book called The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. And as this show is being recorded, it is literally blowing up on Amazon. And one of the reasons it's blowing up on Amazon is that Anthony has positioned himself as an amazing authority on sales. He has a site called The Sales Blog. He's written somewhere north, it's got to be at this point of, he mentioned at one point he'd written 1 million words. That was years ago. It must be 1.5 million words at this point. He blogs every single day. He travels the world speaking. He really is exceptional at what he does in his content and the way that he delivers that content. But as I was reading the introduction to the book, I found some interesting parallels that, again, he doesn't know about. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. He was living in Ohio and fashioned himself to be a rock star. So where do you go to pursue your rock and roll fame? He left home to go to L.A. Well, I left Miami to go to L.A. to pursue my entertainment dreams as well, though mine was in production. He needed to get a real job when the whole rock and roll thing wasn't working out, and so he went into staffing, into the employment business. I worked in the employment business right at about the same amount of time, the same time frame, also in Los Angeles. He lived in Brentwood. I have a feeling, wholesalers, I actually saw Anthony, though neither of us knew it, at the local Ralph's at the corner of Bundy and Wilshire. Anthony Iannarino, welcome back to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show.
I was at the Westward Ho, just a little bit down from Barrington in Montana. And the person who was most frequently spotted at the Westward Ho was Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Oh. And I had a girlfriend who said, "Do you know who that is?" And I said, "I have no idea." And she said, "That's Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld." And I said, "What's Seinfeld?" And she said, "You don't know what Seinfeld is?" And I said, "No." And I didn't have TV at the time because I was fronting a hair metal band. And so life was a lot more interesting for me than Seinfeld.
Oh, my goodness. I read about these parallels. And then, of course, you know that we both started blogging right around the same period of time, though I certainly have not had the dedication in terms of every single day that you have had. You have, my friend, really done an amazing job over the course of the last 8 years that we have known about or known each other. I want to talk about this book because this book really is blowing up. As I said, it's an Amazon bestseller as we check the stats moment by moment. What led you to the book? You know, why write the book? Aside from the obvious, you had, this amazing amount of content from the blog, but why the book?
I got a call from a publisher who asked me to write the book, and this was probably 4 or 5 years ago. And basically they said, "We think you're an author and we think you should write a book." And I said, "Great, we agree on that." And they said, "Well, show us a book proposal, which is essentially a table of contents and who the market is." Mm-hmm. And I put together even more than a table of contents. I put together a lot of the thoughts that I'd written, not just from the blog, but other things as I made observations about salespeople and sales leadership while I was just paying attention. And they got this thing in their hands, and they said, "We hate it." And I said, well, so far this isn't very good. And they said, we don't understand the whole first half of the book. I mean, why is self-discipline in here? And why is caring in here? And why is initiative in here? We don't understand those things. The second half of the book we get completely, where you talk about closing and prospecting and those kinds of things. Why don't we just pull some blog posts and fill in the gaps in the second half of the book? Mm. And I asked what I thought was a very good question. They didn't like my question so much, but I asked the question, have you ever sold or led a sales team? And the editor said, no, I never have. And I said, well, I've never published a book before. So what we're going to need to decide is whether you can trust me to know my content and for me to trust you to know your area of expertise and see if that's a match, because all these things in the first half of the book are critically important. And he offered me a counteroffer. He said, why don't you write a book that's going to position you as a consultant so you can get more consulting gigs? And I said, I didn't write a book to get consulting gigs. I'm writing a book to serve the people who will read the book, which are salespeople and sales managers. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't come to agreement on that. And then after we said no, 6 months later, I got a note. We think that all these blog posts would roll up into a nice book. And I said, it's just not going to work that way for me. And I just set it aside. And I had a second publisher come, and they weren't right. And I decided about 2 years ago, I said, you know what, I'm going to publish this book myself. It's a book I want to give to salespeople, and it's a book that I want to give to sales managers. And this is something that I want to do, so I'm going to do it myself. And I wrote the whole book. I hired a really good editor. We spent 6 months on the book. I went to Amazon.com. I put it on CreateSpace, and I started to go down that path. And I was 6 weeks from hitting publish as a self-published author on Amazon.com, which would have been fine for me. But I got a tweet from Portfolio Penguin, and they said, we've made a list of the biggest influencers in sales, and your name is at the top of every list. And we don't understand why you haven't written a book. And
Funny you should ask.
Yeah, well, I said, well, I have. And they said, this is all over direct message on Twitter. They said, well, where is it? And I said, it's on CreateSpace. I'm hitting publish in 6 weeks. And they said, why didn't you use a publisher? And I said, because you don't have a great value prop. And they don't think that that's true, by the way. They think they have a great value prop for authors. And they said, can we at least talk to you before you do this? And I said, sure. We scheduled a call. And the first question was, well, what's the name of the book? And I said, 17 Elements, the periodic table of sales success. And they said, that's terrible. We hate it. And I said, well, this is going well. This reminds me of an earlier conversation I had. And basically, they said, how many books are you going to sell? What are you doing? And I told them, and they said, if you can do that, we will definitely look at your second book. And I said, listen, you're very opinionated, and you know a lot more about books than I do. Why don't you read the book and then tell me everything that I've done wrong? I'll correct as much of it as I can, and maybe we'll talk again when we do the second book. And they agreed to read the book. And they read the book, and I got a note about 6 days later saying, we love this book. We had no idea that we would love this book so much. Here's a 2-book offer. We want the first book, and we want the second book, and we want an option on the third book. And we started rolling then. Now, the only disappointing part of the story was I was 6 weeks away from publishing, and now this week we are almost a year later before the book actually hit the shelves.
Wow. Let me do this if I may, and thank you for sharing that story. I thought it'd be good if I just read a little blurb. It's not a long blurb, but it's a little blurb from your introduction. And the reason I want to read it, Wholesalers, is because I think it's going to give you some insight into who we're talking about today, or we're talking with today. Because we're not talking with, as Anthony intimated earlier, we're not talking just with the technician that's got, the next hot idea about how to close more, find more prospects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's, dare I use the word holistic, even though I don't love the word. Anthony, I'm just going to read this if it's okay with you.
Sure.
So I ask again, why do few highly successful salespeople consistently outperform their peers? The answer isn't what you might expect. Success in sales isn't situational. In other words, it isn't based on the product you sell, your customer accounts, or your territory. It doesn't depend on the sales process you use or your company's sales executives. It's certainly nice to have a great product, fast-growing accounts in a virgin territory. It's also important to have an effective sales process and a smart leader on whom you can depend. But there have been successful and unsuccessful salespeople in every situation I've ever seen. To answer my question correctly, you must understand again that sales isn't situational. It's individual. Sales success resides in you. You pick up the phone and call a prospective customer, with another new idea, even after being rejected a dozen times before. You sit face to face with the customer and create value. You muster the support needed to ensure that the customer can capture that value. Nothing carries as much weight in sales success equation as you do. That struck home for a whole bunch of reasons. At the fiber of what I believe, at the fiber of some of the things that I talk to our clients about at Wholesaler Masterminds. And I just love the eloquence with which you put it. Anything you want to expound upon there? It really says a lot.
I think that you should have read the audiobook. You did such a good job. I read it, and it was super painful for me to do. Next time I've got my guy.
Super. Let me know.
You know, that paragraph has got a lot of people's attention, and I think it's this point that I'm making that it's not situational. And if you're making it situational, that's you absolving yourself of the responsibility of being the differentiator, of being the value creator, of being the trusted advisor. Because in that paragraph, I tell a true story. I mean, there are people right now at Google that have a tough time selling, even though they have a hot product in a great market. And I've got a friend who sells cardboard boxes, the most undifferentiated commodity you can think of, and he's absolutely killing it. I mean, he's making money hand over fist because he's the differentiator. That's the thing. And so we think, well, it's my manager, it's my product, it's my commission structure, it's the economy, it's the presidential election, it's the recession that we had, it's all these other things. But you're welcome to have your own beliefs, but you're not entitled to decide what other people believe. So you might believe that your territory is bad, but your competitor is in that same territory. They think it's an awesome territory, and they're pretending that it is and going out and taking actions that you're not taking. And you might think that it's the economy that's driving it, but there are other people who don't care what the economy's like. They're going to hustle. They're going to make the calls. It all ends up being individually, what do you believe in? What do you do that makes the difference for you as a salesperson? And when you get that and you understand it, it's completely empowering. So you're responsible for everything that's going wrong. But because that's true, you are the one thing that can make everything different if you believe that. And I do believe that. And that's what this book is really about. It's about who do you have to be, and then what do you have to do? And I think a lot of times we get these backwards. We write a book on sales to say, here are the things that you have to do. But if you're not somebody that I can buy from, that I'm not going to prefer, then it doesn't matter. So first who, and then after that, what? And that's the book that this is. This is really the premise for the whole book.
Well, your whole first section, Mindset, the Beliefs and Behaviors of Sales Success, your first chapter is self-discipline, the art of me management. Now, I'm guessing we touched on some of the me management notions as you answered the last question. But what else can you add to that whole concept of me management? Because I just know it's super important to my belief system and a lot of the belief system of our most successful listeners.
It's such an interesting concept to just think about this, because there's a lot of books on time management, but from my experience, time relentlessly ticks away no matter what you do. So you have no control over time. The only thing that you really control is what you do between the ticks on the clock. I mean, that's it. That's what you have control over. So it's not time management, it's me management. What do I do between the ticks on this clock and this one ride that I get that we call life? So the most important thing is to have a set of what I would call disciplines or discipline lists to say, I do these because it's who I am. So it's bigger than goals. It's more compelling than goals. I do this every day because this is who I am. So there's a difference between saying I'm going to run a marathon and saying I'm going to be fit and make sure that I'm structurally sound into my old age. Those are two very different concepts. A marathon, you can run it and then it has an end. But a discipline is something that you do forever and ever because it's the right thing for you to do to grow and to become the very best version of yourself. I mean, I think all of us are mostly just pure potential. And if we recognize what our real potential was, it would be shocking to us what we're capable of. But it's really the disciplined action day after day. And so you asked about blog posts. I pulled it up while you were giving me that intro. And to date on the blog, I've written 2,709 posts. And that's 1.91 million words so far. So to give you some idea of what that means, a book is 60,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at something close to, I'm going to say, 32 books,
Yep.
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yep.
And that's just the discipline. And people in my space will say stuff to me like, I could never write a blog post every day. And I say, I know. And then they say, well, I could if I really wanted to. And I say, I know.
Mm-hmm.
You can. If you want it, you can do it. It's just a matter of having the discipline. So I get up at 5 and I write, and it's served me exceedingly well. And I make prospecting calls, and I nurture my dream clients. And these are just disciplines that absolutely change the shape of your business.
Let's talk about the initiative piece. In Chapter 6, you talk about initiative taking action before it's necessary. And what I think is most important as I read it is not the word initiative, because initiative has been written about and spoken about, and we've gnashed our teeth about people that have it and don't forever. But I love the taking action before it's necessary. Tell us more.
Yeah, so if you let something get to the point that you're behind, the instinct for human beings is to do what we did in high school or in college, and that's to just save up our energy and cram. And in relationships, commercial relationships included, and sales particularly, and leadership, you have to take action on what needs to be done before it becomes a problem, before it needs to be done. And as a salesperson, if you want to be a trusted advisor, you only need 2 things to be a trusted advisor. Do you know what they are?
I'm ready for you to tell me.
Trust and advice. Those are the only 2 things. It's a pretty easy recipe when you know that. And the thing about this is, if you want to be the trusted advisor, you have to help prevent your clients from being harmed, which means you need to be helping guide them to the next thing before they even know they need the next thing. So you can't wait and be reactive or responsive to their needs. You have to lead them where you want them to go, because that's your charge if you're going to be a consultative salesperson or a trusted advisor, what I call a level 4 value creator. So this idea of initiative means if you wait until there's a problem, you're not really being a trusted advisor, because a trusted advisor wouldn't allow the problem to happen in the first place. I would bring my insight, my knowledge, my experience in every way that I can create value to bear on that problem and make sure that my client doesn't get hurt before they actually do get hurt.
Wholesalers, I want you to think about what Anthony's speaking about there, and I want you to think about how it relates directly to our business and what's going on inside our business. Think about DOL, think about money market reform, think about passive active, think about whatever you want to think about that is the topic du jour or will be the topic of the next year or 2, and think about how well you are being an ambassador of information and insight on those issues, and taking, as Anthony said, the initiative, acting before it's necessary to position yourself as the consultative wholesaler. We talk a lot about being that consultative person, but how do you become that consultative person? Chapter 9 talks about accountability. It's owning the outcomes that you sell. And again, it starts with what might seem to be the obvious, accountability. That we chip away at that concept all the time. But what do you mean about owning the outcomes that you sell? Because I'm sure there's other messaging under that.
Let's just think about what wholesalers do. I can tell you that I'm going to sell you a product, but if the product is, for example, your retirement, the outcome is that you, in fact, have enough money to survive into old age, right? That's a different outcome. Mm-hmm. And if I'm accountable for that, then that means my job doesn't end when I give you a product or when I give an agent a product. That doesn't end. The beginning of this, that's the start of this. The end is when I make sure that they're taken care of and that they're actually going to be able to do that thing, which means my responsibility to my client doesn't end when I sell them something. It ends when they get the outcome that I sold them. And those are 2 very, very different ideas. For a lot of years, salespeople were able to sell a product and then wish the customer good luck and give them a support number should they have any problems. But that's changed. Now you own it. You sold it, you own it all the way to the end. So you have to make sure that they actually get their problem solved and that they get the outcome that we sell. When you keep that charge, though, and you're accountable, you're the last salesperson that your client needs. I mean, you're the person that they look to, because they know when you say, I can help you get that outcome, when the bullets start flying, when things get tough, when there are big changes, they're in a foxhole and they look over and you're in the foxhole with them, making sure that when the bullets start flying, that somebody's there to take care of things. That's what you have to be accountable for. It's changed the game of sales dramatically. And I think that if you can think of that, what am I really selling them? What is that outcome? And then what does that mean? It means that when the economy changes, we have to go back and make adjustments because what I sold you is no longer serving you. It means that when regulations change, I need to come back and teach you what the new regulations are because we have to make adjustments to what you're doing. And those kinds of things are what make you a trusted advisor. You're proactive and you're accountable for this result and you're showing up, taking care of business.
I want to do a lightning round with you. The lightning round is based upon these quotes that come out of your book that I referenced with you in the pre-discussion before we hit record. So lightning round, I'm going to give you a quote. I want you to give me like 30 seconds of what it means to you and what it means in the context of what you've written in the book. Number 16, that was on the list of 40 that you and I spoke about. A no is not failure, it's information.
Yeah, it's feedback. What it is you didn't create enough value for me. Your pitch wasn't compelling enough. This isn't the right time for me to have this conversation. It's not really a no. It's information that you need to go back and make an adjustment to what you're doing. And when you take it for feedback and you start making adjustments, you get rid of your no's.
This is one of my favorites, especially as it relates to our audience, our listeners. The ability to think on your feet is no excuse for being unprepared.
I love that one. You know what? I love thinking on my feet, too. There's nothing more fun. And I was in a room once where I was presenting and there were 14 people and I was by myself and I was thinking, these poor people are completely outgunned. I had done so much homework. I had so much research at my fingertips. I felt like I was totally in command. And so the reason that I'm comfortable on my feet in any kind of situation is because I do my homework. You've got to prep. And remember, the time that we get to spend face-to-face with our clients is so rare and it's so important. You've got to do the work to be completely prepared and go in and create as much value as is humanly possible.
Number 3 in the lightning round, the hard sell closing techniques of the past may be dead, but the need to ask for commitments from the client is not.
Rob, you do love your children, right?
I do, even though they're four-legged fur babies, but yes, I do.
You do want them to be taken care of should something happen to you, right?
Absolutely.
You do want to make sure that they go to puppy college, right?
And graduate with honors.
Exactly. I'm going to need you to sign here because I can't leave your home knowing that I've left you in a place where you're not taken care of.
Got to close.
Okay. So, yeah, that's the way that things were done. That's not good anymore. But the commitment gaining still is. So I need to say, Rob, listen, it seems like you have some concerns about this right now. And what I'd like to ask is for an opportunity for you to share all the concerns that you're having so I can try to resolve them for you and make sure that you're totally taken care of and 100% confident moving forward. When could we get together to have that conversation? Mm-hmm. That still has to happen. Mm-hmm. You still have to do that. You got to get the commitment. Even though we're not going to use a hard sell technique, you still have to be a commitment gainer.
We are always speaking about moving the sales process forward. I can't let the appointment end on a thud. There has to be something evident that's going to come out of this appointment besides the fact that my footprints are in the carpet when I leave.
I want to see it on a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
The proof for me is on a calendar.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I got one more. I got time for one more. Negativity is the only cancer that spreads by contact.
It's true. You know what? This is a strange observation I've made. Maybe you have a different experience, but here's my observation. If you sit a negative person next to a positive person, the negative person will win. They will chip away at that positive person with so much negativity that eventually that positive person will start to turn negative. And I never see it work the other way. I never see a positive person flip the negative person into positive. So you have to protect your mindset at all costs, which means if someone's a cancer, if they're super negative, if they're, for example, your Facebook friends, and right now it's a political season, so there's nothing but negativity on Facebook. If that starts to infect you, that becomes your mindset. And I will tell you another observation that's worth noting while we've got a minute, and that is you don't choose your beliefs, they choose you. You get infected by this stuff because it's coming in all the time, unless you put up barriers and say, I don't let that sort of negativity into my life because I'm a positive person, I'm empowered, and I make a difference. And when you start doing that, it means that you probably have to mute some friends on Facebook. You definitely have to turn off a lot of the television or the radio shows that you listen to, and you got to start pumping in good stuff. You got to pump in Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Anthony Robbins, Stephen Covey, Les Brown, Jim Rohn. you got to start pouring in the good stuff so that will insulate you. It fills you up to the point where nothing negative can come in.
Wholesalers, if you're having a national sales meeting, a divisional meeting, a complex meeting, a broker-dealer conference, and you want to bring in a speaker, an authority, an author, a thought leader about selling and the sales process that goes well beyond just the quote-unquote mechanics of how to sell, Anthony Iannarino might make a perfect choice. Get more information at WMM Speakers, WMMspeakers.com. The only sales guide you'll ever need is the name of the book. Anthony Iannarino is the author. Anthony, thank you so very much for coming back to join us.
Thanks for having me back. It was awesome, as always.
I appreciate that. Wholesalers, come back next time for another episode of the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. Thank you for listening, wholesalers. Visit us at wholesalermasterminds.com.